Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. So today we're chatting to screenwriter Catherine McFall about her experience as a Type 5 The Investigator. Apologies, there are a couple of Facebook message notifications just because I hadn't realised it was still open on my laptop. But other than that, I've tried to cut out any sort of technical issues. But yeah, enjoy. Hi Catherine, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. First of all, how did you learn about the Enneagram?
I learned about the Enneagram in the same way that you did, I think. At university, we used the Enneagram in one of our classes in undergrad. So we talked through all the different types and we had to try, well, not that we didn't have to try figure out what type we were, but
It's kind of what we all did, yeah.
It was as like an acting tool.
Cool. And what did you kind of connect with about the Enneagram, and what do you connect with about the Enneagram, do you think?
The reason I like it is because it's helped me figure out why some of my friends do things differently from me. In terms of like if they'd be doing something and I'm like, why are you doing it that way? Like I wouldn't do it that way. It's helpful to remember like, oh, they're doing it that way because they see the world in a different way and their brain works in a different way.
Yeah.
Because they're a different type. Which it's been fun to figure out what types different people are in my life.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. That's half the reason I enjoy it, is kind of seeing how other people kind of act very differently to how you would kind of expect them to. And also it makes you be like, oh, okay, they're not just being like annoying or whatever. They're just like, that's just how they think of things.
Yeah.
So often the type 5s, because they're more because they're quite analytical and like to think a lot, they're perceived as like more scientific, whereas obviously like you're a screenwriter, you're more connected with the arts, which is a manifestation of a Type 5, and it's a common one. But so how do you experience your 5-ness within like not being into sort of a more scientific way?
Yeah, I think it's funny because I remember when you first told me that I was a Type 5, I was like, really? And before that, when we were trying to figure out like what types we were at university, I really struggled to put myself into a box. I think because I read all of the types and I was like, well, that's not me, and I don't agree with that bit, and I don't get this bit, so where do I fit in? So I think I struggled with that like perception of being seen as like cerebral.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't think of myself as like a cerebral, like I sit in my room and I'm just reading lots of books and I don't like the outside world. But as I've sort of thought about it more over the last couple of years, I definitely see bits of myself that play into that. And especially it's funny that you say that it's like analytical, yet I'm doing screenwriting, because I think screenwriting is probably like the most analytical form of writing. Like writing a play is very sort of like, oh, you can do anything, like it's all imaginary, anything can happen on stage. And when it comes to to screenwriting, like there is a very definite set of rules and like a way to format the script that you can use to like form your story. So it's funny that you just said that, because I was like, oh, maybe that's why I like it. So it's like, maybe that's why it works for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. So for the 5, each type kind of has a social role, and that's kind of how they act kind of in a group situation and stuff. And the social role for the 5 is kind of the expert. So how do you relate to that? How, and if so, sort of how do you relate to that?
I really like buck at being like, I don't want to be called an expert, or like, but maybe that's just because I don't want to seem like I'm like a know-it-all. I do like in social situations, I really like talking about what people are really into. So like if someone, and that doesn't need to be, I like I think when I think of like someone being really analytical, I think of them like reading like old library textbooks and they're really stuffy.
Mhm.
But like I don't mean it that way. I mean it like if someone brings up like a TV show that I'm really interested in and they're really interested in, I will happily sit there and talk about like Love Island for 3 hours because I'm like, let's get into that show because it's mine. But yeah, so like in terms of that, I definitely identify with like getting into a subject, or if someone is really into something that I don't know much about, I like asking them questions about whatever they're into, so that I'm learning a little bit, not only like about the subject, but also about like it tells you a little about people, I think, to know what they're interested in.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And then kind of the title of your type is the investigator. So how do you relate to sort of being an investigator?
Yeah, but I'm a funny like side note about this is that Adrian, for our anniversary, adopted a manatee like on behalf, and he sent me this certificate that says like this manatee is adopted by Catherine, but he could pick whichever manatee he wanted from like a list of manatees, and the one that he picked is called Betsy, and like she's nicknamed the investigator, and she's like very curious, and like her personality matches up my personality. So I just thought it was really funny.
That's amazing.
Sorry, what was your original question?
Well, how do you relate to being an investigator?
Well, I don't think of myself as being like super smart or good at puzzles or like good at mysteries. I'm not very like we did a show about Sherlock Holmes last year. I was in the writer's room for a show about Sherlock Holmes, and it is so much harder to like write all of those mysteries than it is to solve them, and it made me realize like how much I'm not like Sherlock Holmes, but I do enjoy like mysteries. I enjoy like watching like crime shows and like shows to do with politics and like all of that.
You kind of like the reading of mysteries and stuff kind of helps you to kind of learn about the world and stuff.
Yeah,
That makes sense. And so there's each center, so there's the body center, the heart center, and the thinking center, and the 5 lives in the thinking center, and they each have kind of an underlying emotion. So for the heart center, it's shame. For the body center, it's anger, and for the thinking center, it's fear. So how do you relate to kind of the emotion of fear?
hard to relate. I think I've become like much better at trying not to be like scared of things.
Mm-hmm.
But like definitely when I was younger, like if I was like worried about something, I just wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I was scared about something, or like if I find I still do this like less so now, but I still do it a little bit, where like if I'm not sure what I want to say about something, I just won't say anything. Like if I, rather than saying something not being totally sure what I'm saying or where I'm going with it, I just like wouldn't speak.
Yeah.
So a lot of like my teachers were like, Catherine doesn't speak, but like she never speaks up in class, but it was because I didn't want to like speak on something that I wasn't totally sure on. Like I would rather listen to someone else talk who knows a lot about the subject than me talk if I only half know about the subject and I'm kind of like bluffing my way through. Like, I don't want to like mislead people in any way.
Yeah.
So I think that fear definitely comes into like that aspect of it.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Or like I think a lot of people do this though, where like sometimes if I know I'm going to speak to someone, I rehearse what I'm going to say in my head before
I definitely do that.
But I think lots of people do that, like even like, but it can be something really small, like I'll be like waiting in line at the post office and I'll be like rehearsing in my head to say that I want like 6 stamps.
Oh no, I do that all the time. Well, that's what's interesting is like, especially with Enneagram stuff, is not all types do that, and I definitely expect everyone to do that, but they shockingly don't.
Yeah, and that's what I've noticed about how me and Adrian like speak about things, it's because I think he's a type 2. I don't know for sure. I suspect he's a type 2. But when we talk about certain subjects, like I will talk about things, and whenever I'm talking about it, like I'm talking about it to get to a point, and like I know what my point is when I start talking.
Yeah.
Whether when he is talking about something, he sometimes doesn't know what point he wants to make when he starts talking, so he will like talk around the subject and then like realize a point while he's talking and then be like, oh, that's what I'm trying to say, I guess. And I'm like, but you didn't know that before you started speaking.
Yeah. And you would kind of have thought in advance of
and he's like so happy to like just chat until like he comes upon what he wants to actually say.
Yeah. But yeah, that's, I think, especially for type 5 and me being a type 4 as well, we sort of your connection with your wing type of a type 4, I think for both of us, we kind of think about, in my way, I sort of probably imagine a conversation in a like fantasy kind of way, and yours is more you think about the steps
possible,
that could happen.
Like if I say this, they might say this, and then I need to say this.
I do the same thing, so don't worry. So, mentioning about your wings, so for the 5, the 2 types either side are the type 6 and the type 4, and how do you feel like they influence your type, if you feel like they influence your type?
So, type 4, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is like creative, like wanting to be special.
Yeah. Creative, wanting to be special, wanting to be different, and very connected to emotions. Kind of everything is about their feelings.
Yeah, I think I definitely connect to the 4 part of that. Like, I'm a very emotional person. I think, like, not like, maybe not like outwardly to the world. Like, I'm not like wandering around like wearing my emotions on my sleeve, but like in private or with people that I'm really good friends with, I do get like my emotions can run very high, and I can get very like mood swinging. So, and I'm definitely like driven by my emotions in that sense. And obviously, like I do screenwriting, and I'm like very into being creative. And a lot of that probably comes from wanting to be like seen as different and like have someone point it out and be like, this is cool, you did this, and only you could do this. I think I used to relate to being like to have a type 6 wing. A couple of years ago, I would have said that I related to that really, really strongly, and I relate to it less so now, which is nice. But I used to be like very, very anxious about putting myself out there, or like doing things wrong, or like things going wrong, or if I put myself out there and like the world's blew up. And I guess I still am like that in some ways. Like I still get like irrationally worried about things. Like I worry about things that I don't need to worry about, but I've gotten much better at controlling it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's definitely a very common experience for a lot of people with their wings, is that quite often for a part of their life, they really rely on one side, and then kind of as they get older, they start relying on their other wing, and then sometimes they kind of flip between the two. So I think that's definitely quite a common kind of way that people move through their lives. For the type 5, your line of disintegration goes to type 7, and your line of integration goes to type 8. And how do you relate to kind of those lines?
So I think I don't relate to 7 as much. But maybe that's because I'm like in a healthy place at the moment. I do like on some level of like in terms of like jumping from thing to thing, I definitely have had like periods in my life where I'm like I can't focus on anything. Like it's I find that very frustrating whenever like I can't focus on one thing and then I'm doing lots of other things. Like it takes up like a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Which is annoying for me. But I don't just think it's not just like knowledge specifically, it's sort of like tasks in my life, like little things. If it's like I have laundry to do, and like there's washing up, and like my bed's a mess, and I have like 3 different things that I should be doing for a master's degree. Like that's where I would be like, I do a bit of one and then a bit of another and then a bit of another. At the end of the day, I don't feel like I've achieved anything because I've only done a little bit of each. So that's where I'd be like, oh, this is irritating.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's interesting how you're kind of phrasing the energy stuff. Is for a lot of type 5s, they want to make sure they have enough energy to do everything. Like they don't want to waste energy, essentially.
Yeah. I don't want to like do something and only have it like half done. Like I hate that. Like I would rather like do something like I've done a portion of it and it's like, okay, so it is like or if it's like reading a book, like I've read this much of the book, I've read this chapter. I hate like not reading a book and stopping it halfway through a chapter. Like it feels like it's unfinished and I need to go back to it. So it's the same with like anything that I'm doing. I would rather sit there and work on it for like hours at a time and get it done and be able to like take it off the list than to do a little bit of it and then have to jump to something else and then have to jump to something else.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And then your sort of line of integration to the type 8, like do you relate to kind of that and stuff?
I again like didn't used to, but I think I do much more now in terms of like being like a leader and being an authority figure. I'm much more comfortable with that idea as I grow older, and especially now because I'm like teaching classes. That's something that like I didn't think I could do until I had like that level of like knowledge on a subject.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, oh, I definitely do know about this enough to teach it to other people. And like I'm very, whenever I know everything about a subject like that, like I do feel confident enough to teach it to other people or share it with other people.
No, that definitely makes sense. So, what fictional character do you kind of relate to the most?
So, when we originally like read about type 5s, Sherlock Holmes is the one that like always comes up, and it always really bothers me because I don't relate to Sherlock Holmes like well, not at all. Like I do relate to like aspects of like how he logically thinks through things, but he is very like snooty and elitist and like cold and unfeeling, and I don't feel like I'm that at all.
No, yeah.
So I was trying to think of other fictional characters who like are really into knowledge but also are like warm people. And the one I came up with is Giles from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen Buffy, but
okay, so his deal is that he acts as, this is so nerdy, he acts as Buffy's watcher. So he's like a vampire slayer and he's basically her guardian for like how she should tackle the world. And a lot of his role in the show is like literally like researching things, and he like is the librarian at the school, but he's also got this, you know, alter ego that helps Buffy out. But he's also like incredibly like warm and kind-hearted and like loyal towards the little like group of friends that they make. So yeah, like his position in the show is like he pulls in information in order to help her out, as opposed to like Sherlock Holmes, who like just has a lot of information for his own gain.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And it sounds like he's he's kind of, to put the Enneagram on him, he kind of sounds like he's a very integrated type 5 as well, because that sort of aspect, the kind of protective aspects and looking after people, kind of draws from the type 8 as well and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that definitely makes sense, kind of, and wanting to have a representation that isn't just cold, because I think that's something that I think a lot of people don't connect. That's why a lot of people who probably are 5s wouldn't connect with 5s.
Yeah, I think that's what I struggled with whenever like we were first reading through them and I was first learning about Enneagram, was like I think the description for a type 5 was like that they just sit like in a room like reading and like alone, and I'm like, yeah, like when I was a kid, I probably did that a lot. Like I was a big bookworm, but like that doesn't mean that you don't want to have like a social life.
Yeah, it's not the
Like
only thing
the
you
whole point of like learning about all this stuff and like reading and like getting interested in things is so you can go, or at least for me, to like go share it with other people.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think that's something that, because I think a lot of the literature about fives does say stuff like that, and and I'm sure there are fives who are more, who are less interested in being social, but doesn't mean that there aren't fives who are interested in being social. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today. That's been really interesting. Yeah, and do you have anything else that you kind of want to say about the Enneagram, or that you want to kind of ask me before go? But
no, I don't think so. I'm enjoying the videos.
Cool, thanks. Cool. Well, I will thank you so much, and yeah, see you soon. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you want to see my other interviews that I've done with Hannah, who is a type 3, and Aaron, who's a type 7, just check out my playlist of Enneagram interviews. And if you're interested in seeing more Enneagram interviews, subscribe down below. I'm planning on doing a few more. Check out my Instagram at Flynn Davies Enneagram. And I'll see you next time. Thanks, bye.